The Heartless have great fear of the Keyblade.
The Final Fantasy characters.
That's why they'll
game.
keep coming after you, no matter what.
Well, I didn't ask for this.
The Keyblade chooses its master, and it chose you.
So, tough luck.
How did all this happen? I remember being in my room. Wait a minute! What happened to my home? My island? Riku! Kairi!
You know what? I really don't know.
Okay, so we just had a massive plot dump, and we've got to get ready for another slightly smaller one. But first, two things I want you to take note of for the future, just to show how kind of wonky this game's writing is. And I want it to be noted, the writing in the first Kingdom Hearts, the plot, the way it is exposited to the player, it's not bad. It's rather weak at points, but for the first game, it's a fairly straightforward narrative about a young man trying to, like, go through the typical hero's journey, with the aid of anthropomorphic barnyard animals. This is before things got so incredibly convoluted, where you have this principal cast of about 50 different characters who are all the same 3 people cloned over and over and over again. So this is not bad, but 2 major points to keep an eye on for the remainder of the Traverse Town plotline, especially this next series of cutscenes. If you'll recall, back on the Destiny Islands, Sora's wooden sword not only did no damage to the Heartless, it literally could not make contact with them. It phased right through. And the implication between that and the cutscenes we just watched is that the Keyblade alone can actually deal damage to or defeat the Heartless. Now, this is somewhat retconned in later entries, but essentially it just never gets brought up again. But also, it is worth noting that there's this concept that the Heartless represent this evil force, which I mentioned again, also gets retconned in later entries to be more reflective of like an alternate universe or a bizarro world. The Heartless and creatures from the Dark Realms have hearts naturally of darkness, but they are also constantly hungering and avaricious, wanting to reach out into the realms or worlds that are naturally of the light, and drag their inhabitants, their energy, into the realms of darkness so that they may feed and expand with them. Again, none of that really comes into play here. It's just good versus evil. Don't let your soul fall to the corrupting evil influences of the darkness. But just keep an eye on both those things as we proceed, alright? So a couple things before we move on. Got a couple more treasures to get, then we can finally move on to the Traverse Town boss fight, the real boss fight here. So 1800 or 6 p.m., midday or noon, and 7 a.m. What we can do if we hit it just right is strike the cuckoo on the underside of this clock. It takes some doing, but trust me, it's worth it. We cannot lock onto it, of course, that would be too easy. Or no, we strike the clock itself, okay. And once we set the clock to several of these times, we can actually gain additional treasures. Really quickly, we'll need to talk to Yuffie, who will finally tell us that our Keyblade contains one very important ability. Its most important ability. That didn't get exposited on in the previous cutscenes, but this is the entire purpose of the Keyblade as an item, as a plot device. It can lock or unlock literally anything, including metaphysical objects or concepts. So as you saw there, we were able to unlock that chest and gain the extremely powerful healing item, the elixir, that was hidden inside. Now, if we go back to the keyhole, say, either outside the gate at the 3rd district. Hold on. or the locked safe in the abandoned storefront in the first district, we could effortlessly open those and open a new route of travel in the former case, or retrieve a pretty important item in case of the latter. Now, for setting the clock to the 3 times hinted at by the portrait frames, we were able to spawn a chunk of mithril ore, a very important synthesis item that we'll be seeing an awful lot of in future. So we could save here, but instead we are just going to barrel on, soldier on, and go face down the Heartless.
Yuffie, go!
And the emblem Heartless is now found us even here,
Yuffie!
and
Sora, let's go!
Donald becomes the subject of slapstick comedy, as always. I love this shot. It's just so out of place for most of this series. You wouldn't expect such over-the-top, like, classic cartoon references, but that one was perfect. So Squall says don't bother with the small fry, but he's not the one who's going to have to deal with this character and their ability to level up, so we shall ignore him for now. These emblem Heartless, which we finally get to face down, are known as the Soldiers. Now, they're a bit more durable and powerful than the Shadows, but they also can't meld into the ground or protect themselves in any way, so in my mind, they're actually easier to dispatch than the Soldiers are. Or, sorry, than the Shadows are.
Come on!
And they serve as the template for most humanoid Heartless we'll be seeing throughout Kingdom Hearts. One thing I really like about Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2 in particular is the design team put a lot of effort into making visually and aesthetically distinct Heartless that correspond to each world. So while you'll be seeing a lot of the same enemies, soldiers and shadows and the like, in many worlds, there are also a bunch of Heartless that exist in only one or two worlds, and have designs that closely match the either art style or aesthetic principles of that environment's source material. So, just as an example, without spoiling too much, one of the first properties we will go to explore is a world based on Disney's Tarzan, and the principal humanoid Heartless there take the form of, like, various simians, like different types of monkeys, and I think that's a really cool aesthetic.
Come on!
And most of those humanoid Heartless are about the size of and share the basic behavior of the soldiers. The soldiers are not difficult at all to deal with. Once again, my only complaint is that we can't really block or dodge them mid-combo right now, so we're just going to be stuck trading the odd blow with them. Their most dangerous move is that clearly telegraphed kind of cartwheeling dropkick. But of course they can be knocked out of that, and it's very, very easy for them to miss with it as well. The only thing about the soldiers is, they can make them a bit tricky relative to the shadows, is that their attacks have some serious range. The shadow will just kind of awkwardly clamber over you with a short-range lunging slash, but a soldier can use either its spin kick or its drop kick to clear maybe a good 8-9 feet in a single motion, if not a bit more, so just something to keep in mind. Now, to actually progress the story and finally fight the Traverse Town boss and then eventually get out of here, we are going to have to go to the previously empty third mission. We are already level 8, as you can see, which for this point in the story is pretty good. I want to check real quick to see if we earned any new abilities. We did not. So we will carry on with business as usual. And finally, our, I'm loath to say heroes, our perspective characters will meet. Now, this little cutscene with Donald and Goofy perfectly encapsulates their utility in combat. This is the game intuitively showing you how to use them. That is to say, not to use them. I love Donald and Goofy to pieces as characters, but in combat they are just north of useless. With Donald being a somewhat powerful mage who can never stay alive long enough to make much of a difference beyond the casting of some healing spells, which can be very useful situationally, and Goofy being kind of tanky and capable as a distraction, just not dealing a whole lot of damage. That said, just the presence of Donald's healing spell makes life more bearable with them than without. Now that we've dispatched the soldiers, it's time to take on their commander, the ridiculous-looking guard armor. It's worth noting that for Final Mix, most Emblem Heartless received entirely new color palettes, and while I really liked the majority of these, the guard armor received probably one of the worst redesigns. I mean, I know it's supposed to evoke the bright pastel colors associated with, like, Tokusatsu, mecha, or just superheroes in general. But its original color scheme, this, like, really nice plum and silver, that was not nearly as erratic as this design, looked just a bit nicer in my opinion. That said, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the conclusion of the Twilight Town, we're in Kingdom Hearts 2 already, you'll forgive me, I've been talking for 3 hours straight, the Traverse Town story arc, the Guard Armor boss fight. Now, Guard Armor is a bit trickier than other enemies we've fought up to this point in that it actually has a certain technique or a couple gimmicks that you'll have to take into account as you progress through this boss fight. Guard Armor is divided as an enemy into 5 distinct segments. 2 hands, or gauntlets, 2, like, sort of boots, or the hammer legs, and the torso. Now, while you can attack any component of the body individually, and they do each have their own separate supply of health, you will need to destroy all 4 extremities prior to destroying the torso, and consequently the guard armor as a whole. Now, each component of the guard armor can act totally autonomously of the others. So, oftentimes, the torso, hammer legs, and gauntlets will be totally separate on opposite sides of the arena, carrying out different attacks. The gauntlets will simply prime themselves and spin in like a cyclone maneuver. This deals very little damage, and it's easy, just as it was with Selfie's sort of 360-degree radius attack, to just interrupt it with an attack of your own and stun the gauntlets. The hammer legs are a bit trickier, because they have 2 attacks that are not only a bit difficult at times to see coming, but also difficult to interrupt or evade. They can spring up into the air and then come crashing down, creating a pretty large and painful AoE shockwave, and they can also quite simply walk all over you, taking 3 or 4 jaunty steps forward and causing damage to any characters they interact with, or rather intersect with at that time. The torso on its own is practically useless. It has 1 attack that it will only use once the other 4 limbs have been destroyed, and it's an attack that, again, is fairly easy to predict and interrupt, just as we did with some of Leon's attacks. That said, let's begin the Guard Armor boss fight. It's best, in my experience, to eliminate the hammer legs first, the gauntlets second, and then go for the torso. As you see, we interrupted the gauntlets AoE attack without even trying. There's that AoE. Now, after we destroy each component of the guard armor, everybody is playing HP or they're useful if you find yourself taking damage. As you see, he dealt enough damage to the guard armor to actually cause the whole thing to just collapse. Beautiful. You'll see the guard armor prior to doing the shockwave attack kind of taps its heels on the ground. Looks like it was getting ready to do the same, but I know it couldn't because we destroyed the other hammer leg. Toy Stone could do the AoE on its own, but I don't believe it causes quite as much damage. Dealing with gauntlets should be easy because they actually have way less health. Now that the hammer legs are gone, this is... Ow! I was not expecting to just eat. Oh god. Alright. Now that it's just the torso, it will begin carrying its tornado attack, or cyclone, whatever you want to call it. It'll just charge straight on at you. And it's easy peasy now to interrupt it, but stun it and vanquish the creature, learning a brand new ability in the process. That was the guard armor, not bad, you say? And see, by destroying these emblem Heartless, we then free the captured souls within. Absolutely beautiful. What happens to them, we don't find out for a couple games, but we're setting them free and that's all that matters. For completing the boss fight, we receive a unique accessory that's going to be quite useful this early on in the game.
So, you were looking for me?
They too have been seeking the wielder of the Keyblade.
Hey, why don't you come with us? We can go to other worlds on our vessel.
I wonder if I could find Riku and Kairi.
Of course!
Are you sure?
Who knows? But we need them to come with us to help us find the kid.
Sora, go with them. Especially if you want to find your friends.
Yeah, I guess.
But you can't come along looking like that. Understand?
Oh?
No
As the
frowning,
horrific,
no sad
like,
face.
foul
Okay?
homunculus.
Yeah, you gotta look funny, like us. Yup. Whoa.
Yes, but
I love that
one's
nobody
happy
questions the
faces.
giant cartoon animals running around.
Happy?
Nobody. Even those from worlds where such a thing would be a literal impossibility. Square Enix's team was very, very good at incorporating a lot of awkwardness into their titles.
Okay, why not?
In the
I'll
early
go with you
2000s.
guys.
Between this and Final Fantasy X, my god.
Name's Goofy.
I'm Sora.
All for one, one for all.
This is it, the dream team. And, of course, we now are
That
introduced to our
little
villains.
squirt took down that Heartless. Who'd have thought it? Such is the power of the Keyblade.
I
The
love them all.
child's strength is not
Spectacular
his own.
characters. Most of them
Why don't we
voiced by
turn him
their
into a
original
Heartless?
voice actors.
That'll settle things quick enough.
And the brats' friends are the king's lackeys. Slug on the eyes, they're all bilge rats by the look of them.
You're no prize yourself.
One of these villains isn't quite
Enough.
like the others. Who does
The
it belong?
Keyblade has chosen him. Will it be he who conquers the darkness? Or will the darkness swallow him? Either way, he could be quite useful.
So the very poorly obscured cast of Disney villains will be acting as our antagonists for most of the story chapters that follow, right up until the penultimate chapter of the game's central plot. And they do a phenomenal job, obviously, especially those of them represented by their original voice actors, in adding some real spice to the game's presentation and delivery. I love it. But if you're expecting, like, nail-biting, like, backs against the wall, high-octane boss battles with them, in most cases, don't. It's kind of been a Kingdom Hearts series tradition that bosses taken directly from Disney material tend to be fairly weak. There's one or two exceptions in this game that we'll get into quite a ways down the line. So we receive a bit more totally useless currency. Thanks, I guess. And for defeating Leon earlier on during his mini-boss fight, we receive a second elixir, something that is invaluable at this stage in the game. Trust me, I'm not going to be popping elixirs right now, certainly not for any of the main story content, but if any of you know anything about Kingdom Hearts 1, its structure, its content, you know there is a particular fight later on that it is greatly advisable to have a tremendous stock of elixirs for, because you're going to be burning through them, and you're probably going to be replaying that fight many, many times. So it's implied that beyond the front gates of Traverse Town is just a drop off into the dimensional void where our candy ship is waiting for us. And Donald is going to teach us our first magic spell, Fire. Now this is very, very important right here. I will demonstrate as soon as we're through with this tutorial. But assigning your magic or items to shortcuts is essential for combat. And now Goofy, God love Goofy, just taught us an ability that will allow us to dodge certain attacks. Well, any attack, really, if we can get the dodge out in time. And that's going to be probably a bit of an issue for me. But at least we now have a proper evasion move. And now that Donald and Goofy have both taught us something, I believe... No, Jiminy Cricket's not going to teach us something. I thought he was the one that taught you about trinities, but no, instead, looks like Goofy will. I absolutely love the chemistry between the lead characters in this series, because... And this will just give you an idea as to how dim Sora and Donald's characterization is. Goofy, of all characters, is consistently the most level-headed, rational, and mature member of the principal cast. Goofy is the voice of reason. But now, my weird little tangent aside, we can interact with blue Trinity marks. And every time you interact with a Trinity mark, you will have a different effect on the world around you. Sometimes as simple as just spawning an item, but sometimes, as in this case, maybe transporting you across the map, where you could get a postcard that you could redeem for more useless garbo. Yes, sorry, shortcuts. I was going to explain about magic. Now, if you look once more to the command menu in the lower left corner of the screen, you will notice that there are 4 slots there. 2 of the previously blank slots have been filled in, and the 4th will stay blank for quite some time. Now, in order to maneuver between these different slots, I have to press up or down on the directional pad. This is very unwieldy if, say, I was in the middle of combat and wanted to use an item. I would have to press down twice, X, select the item. But I believe in Kingdom Hearts 1 they don't give you an opportunity to do anything about that for items. But it's also quite cumbersome, especially if I just want to pop off a quick fireball in somebody's face, to have to drop down, potentially lower my guard if I need to, say, counter an attack or something. Press the X button once to open the magic menu. This is especially cumbersome once you get more spells and would have to scroll through them in the same fashion. And then press X again to actually shoot my fireball. Instead, you can go into the status menu, or the customize menu, rather, look at Sora, and then set a number of shortcuts. In this game, your shortcuts apply to magic only, but it's expanded to cover things like summons, I think, definitely items, and other abilities in later entries. But you can set up to 3 different spells to shortcuts, which can then be can then be launched at any point in combat without having to maneuver through all those menus by simply holding down the left bumper, or L1, and pressing the corresponding face button on your controller. It's the only way I will ever use magic that does not have anything to do with, like, healing or defense, because it's just the most efficient way to get your offensive spells out. Now, before we leave, a couple quick things I wanted to do in Traverse Town, and then we can finally get out of here. You may have noticed that there are a few keyholes around town that we need to unlock, starting with this save, which contained yet another postcard. At present, I think there's 3 of these we need to drop off. There was also a keyhole and a trinity in the 3rd district, and it's important that we go see what's up over there before, especially, you know, if there's any treasure over there. I've actually never gotten that 3rd district trinity before, I don't think. So I want to go see what it is, just in case if it is treasure, we don't come back here much later and gather it when it would be effectively useless to a more developed character. For the time being, the Heartless are completely gone from Traverse Town, so we can explore at our own leisure. We could open that that door in Blazing Flame Sigil at present, but we will be coming back here very soon, and we'll take care of that at that time. The last order of business here is going to be to simply unlock the shortcut between the 1st and 3rd districts. Pop one more trinity that's right over here by the entrance. Which gives us just a bunch of money, apparently. This was supposed to be the trinity that you received the tutorial for. As you pass by to walk out the gates, it would automatically trigger, but since I headed over there first, instead we just kind of get this rather anticlimactic, like money shower. What we got from the 3rd district, by the by, was just a camping set, an upgraded cottage, essentially. Totally useless, not worth the time. Our 3rd postcard nets us a Mega Potion. Very nice. The 4th, a Mega Ether, an item which will restore MP to the entire party. Situationally useful. And our 5th, a chunk of Mithril Ore. Those are all the postcards we have at present, and I may be wrong, but the only ones we can get right now. So that said, it's time to actually venture boldly forth beyond the bounds of Traverse Town and into easily the worst part of this game. Welcome to the Overworld. We have a bit of exposition here from Chip and Dale. Okay. So all they explained was how to navigate the world interface. As you can see, we're right here in Traverse Town, and Disney Castle is to the left, completely inaccessible for the entire game. No idea why they actually included that on the world map, but there it is. And now it's time for us to actually travel between worlds using the Gummy Ship, which, thanks to us winning that race earlier, is automatically named the Space Base for us. How lovely. The Gummy Ship is easily one of the most contentious parts of this game, and in my opinion is easily the worst thing about it. You'll see exactly why, but I do want to point out before we take our inaugural Gummy voyage, that a phenomenal amount of time and effort was actually put into designing the Gummy Ship system. As you can see, we could press the square button to open something called the Gummy Garage, which I'll give you just a quick look at very briefly. We don't need to view a tutorial. And guys, this is pretty amazing, right? Even for a mechanic I'm not all that fond of. They went above and beyond by giving you not millions, but scores and scores of customization options for your Gummy Ship. So, as you travel between worlds, and it is mandatory to use the Gummy Ship anytime you travel to a new world, you could be collecting new pieces for your ship, anything from more armor to different weapons or special abilities or just cool little aesthetic things. But see, here's the sad thing. There is an incredibly intricate interface that goes into, well, actually building a Gummy Ship. You see here we can mess about with it if we want to, but I'm not about to ruin the ship I'll probably be using for most of the game, so just showing this to you. There's a million different types of gummy you can use. A million different types of gummy to collect that you will collect throughout the game. But it does bother me that so much effort was put into a component of the game that is entirely removed from the central gameplay loop. I don't mind mini-games and, like, challenges therein. I'm usually a very big fan of them. For instance, in the Yakuza series, one of my favorite series of all time, all of the little distractions you could engage yourself with, be it RC car racing, hunting, arena combat, like real estate management of all things, they all were a source of great enjoyment to me, but because they were constantly giving you positive feedback, new things to unlock and play with in the primary gameplay loop, and some of your exploits in the gameplay loop would give you fun little things to mess about with in those sub-games. Here, though, in Kingdom Hearts, anything you unlock with or for the gummy ship will only impact these brief little gummy ship segments. They have no bearing, or very little bearing, I should say, in this version, on your experience throughout the actual central gameplay loop. You'll see why I actually don't like gummy itself, though, very momentarily. As Chip and Dale said, every world in this game has a battle level, indicating the relative strength of the Heartless that you will encounter therein. You will notice at present, Traverse Town doesn't have a battle level because we purged it of all the Heartless infestations that were present in the city for now. And our options here are these two mysterious locales. One has a battle level of 1 star, the other a battle level of 2. We're going to go ahead and set sail, or, like, advance at max warp, or what have you, to the battle level 1 world. And with that, it's gummy time. So here we get an interesting bit of lore that some of the ships we'll be finding out in this rather beautifully rendered interdimensional void are either piloted by Heartless or, in many cases, as was kind of confirmed by some of the content in Kingdom Hearts 2, are Heartless themselves. Just going over rudimentary controls. I love how the very casually spoken Disney characters start talking like an instruction booklet in these tutorial sections, like perfect grammar, extremely intricate and technical talk. This is good integration of gameplay and story, of course. Very good. Okay. So the gummy ship sections are actually just this, a very straightforward 3D shooter. You advance along a track, it's on rails, using your lasers or whatever other weapons you may have equipped. If for some insane reason you decided to really get to the gummy ship customization in this game, add enemies and other obstructions, clearing them out of the way, really just killing time until you make it to the next world, which is where you will actually get to experience some more very entertaining quality content. Now, I don't think the concept of the gummy ship as a whole, as some critics do. No, not at all. I actually think the concept of, like, this kind of cool, relaxed little arcade shooter that allows you to have something to do, sort of break up the action between story chapters, sort of serve as a palate cleanser, is a really great one. But I just feel like it was poorly implemented in a system that is incredibly intricate, but utilized for gameplay that is in Kingdom Hearts 1 very bland. Now, they rectify this in Kingdom Hearts 2, where the Gunship returns, by making the environment more detailed and dynamic, greatly increasing the intelligence and abilities of the enemy ships, and also giving you a million incentives to actually play these little mini-games or missions and do well in them. You get more and more stuff, and it plays more like a well-developed shooter. This just feels a little undercooked. Again, conceptually brilliant. I digress. We are now at our, well, technically our third full world of the game, Wonderland. Of course, from Alice in Wonderland. And what better place to begin our journey through an ever-changing and unfamiliar multiverse than the most bizarre dimension of them all. Oh, I adore Wonderland. Some people don't. Quite a few people who've played the entire series find this world's design and central plot fairly dull. And while I'll say that the plot's bare bones, I mean, it kind of was for the source material as well.
I'm here. I should be there. I'm late. Oh, the Queen. She'll have my head for sure.
I would opine that Wonderland actually incentivizes thorough exploration more than almost any other world in the series. Starting off, we see Green Trinity we'll come back for later. But if we pass through the rabbit hole we found ourselves in, we will find ourselves in the locale that much of the world's actual gameplay will take place in. But real quick, I wanted to equip our new accessory, the Brave Warrior, which will increase our health by a not inconsiderable margin, and give us a nominal boost to strength. Very good to have at this time. We have an additional Protect chain. I'm going to go ahead and give that to Donald, because he is incredibly fragile. We can see here we can customize not only our own abilities, but those of our party members as well. Goofy has learned the Rocket, an ability that will use up 1 pip of MP, and allow him to execute a very powerful, diving attack. I see no reason why we shouldn't go ahead and equip that. And in my case, we have just the 1 ability point, unfortunately. But some pretty good abilities. Now, Berserk gives you a boost to your attack power if you were very low on health. I typically don't find it worth it. I'd rather not be at critical health for extended periods of time. But the dodge roll is invaluable. It will allow you to roll out of the way of incoming attacks, and is especially useful for dodging attacks that, to some greater or lesser extent, track the player character. I'm going to go ahead and remove Slapshot temporarily and equip the dodge roll, just because it is so much more useful. See, just a simple press of the square button, and you get a fair amount of motion out of that dodge. Welcome to the Bazaar Room. We will be coming back here time and time again throughout our explorations of Wonderland. And, as you can see, we're just a bit too big for most of the, facilities here, so...
How did he get so small?
Let's see if we can't do something
you're
about
simply
that.
too big.
That talks.
Must you be so loud? You woke me up.
Good morning.
Good night. I need a bit more sleep.
Wait, what do we have to do to grow small?
Why don't you try the bottle? Over there.
So, just as in the film, it is time for us to take a quick drink in order to shrink down to the appropriate size for navigating Wonderland. Well, much of Wonderland at any rate. And as you see, now that we've shrunken down, there is so much more detail in the world, including treasures and other objects that clearly were not there before. Now you'll notice these pink polka dot pattern boxes. Yes, the one up there atop the like little cabinet display, and the one over there on top of the stove. These are special treasure chests that we'll be needing to acquire very soon, so keep their locations in mind. Here we have our first encounter with the series' famous mage Heartless, in this case the Red Nocturnes. Fire-flinging Heartless mages attempt to stay out of the action as best they can and charge up fireballs, which I believe might come in on you ever so slightly. As befits an archetypical mage, they can deal some damage, especially if there's many of them firing off their spells at once, but are fairly fragile. Now that we can pop off a dodge roll, so long as we're not encumbered by the recovery period from like a combo finisher or something, we should never be hit by an attack from a soldier that we see them preparing ever again. We'll be introduced to a couple new enemies during our time in Wonderland, and the Nocturne is far away from the larger threat of the two. Well, I should say, the figuratively larger threat. Certainly not the literally larger threat. Not literally a larger threat. If you cannot tell, I'm still very, very new to Twitch streaming and or talking for hours on end, so my grammar is going to be a little rusty. Alright, now we can interact with the doorknob once again to find that he has absolutely nothing for us. So what we're going to need to do is find a way into that crawl space back there behind the bed. So we'll drink this other beverage, increase our size, and just shove the bed into a two-dimensional form on the wall because Wonderland, and take a drink to shrink right back down. We can progress onwards. Now, as I said, we will be coming back to the Bazaar Room time and again, so don't worry about missing too much content in there. We will get everything the Bazaar Room has to offer in short order.
Court is now in session!
I'm on trial? But why?
Her Majesty, the Queen of Hearts, presiding.
Technically the first Disney villain that we're going to encounter
no
in this entire
doubt about
series.
it. And the reason
And easily
is
the least
because
effective.
I say so, that's why.
That is so unfair.
Well, have you anything to say in your defense?
Of course. I've done absolutely nothing wrong. You may be queen, but I'm afraid that doesn't give you the right to be so mean.
Silence! You dare
wait.
defy me?
Tell her. Burn.
Hey guys, we should help her out.
Blah, blah, blah.
We're outsiders, so wouldn't that be muddling?
Blah, 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 blah.
Oh, yeah. And that's against the rules.
This
court
is something
finds
else
the
to keep in
defendant
mind. They're
guilty
not
as
technically
charged
supposed to meddle in the
for the
affairs of other
crimes
worlds.
of assault and attempted theft of my heart. Off with her head!
No! Oh, please!
Hold it right there!
Who are you? How dare you interfere with my court?
Excuse me, but we know who the real culprit is.
Uh-huh. It's the Heartless.
Anyway, she's not the one you're looking for.
That's nonsense. Have you any proof?
So now we are introduced to the central objective of our time in Wonderland, proving Alice's innocence by gathering evidence that would indicate that the Heartless are responsible for the assault on the Queen and the Kingdom, and not Alice. The evidence can be found in those polka dot boxes that we saw in the Bazaar Room. There are 4 in total, and we gain a little something special if we're able to gather all 4, which we can only do through extensive exploration. that was the only significant interaction we will have with Alice over the course of this entire game. I do like the effort they put into modeling the Queen's Court here. It is uncommon to find an area in an original Kingdom Hearts title that had this many NPCs just standing about. So, without wasting any time, let's be off immediately and try to find proof of Alice's innocence. It should be easy enough. It'll just take a little time. Oh, but as I was saying, please enjoy this text-only cutscene really quickly, introducing us to another fan-favorite character from the original work. But the party is not technically supposed to interfere in the affairs of other worlds. This is a rule that is given absolutely no obedience, I believe at all, from this point on, throughout the rest of the series, including later in this game. And it's thrown out the window entirely in later titles where Sora helps straight up murder people in other worlds. They never explain why they retcon that, or if that's just like a standing order from the king, or what have you. But it seems like it's not exactly as sacred as the Prime Directive or anything to the people in this universe. So yes, if we are able to find all 4 pieces of evidence implicating the Heartless before we present any of it to the Queen of Hearts, then the Cheshire Cat will give us a very useful that will make the last moments of our time in Wonderland much more straightforward. Here we've just got to bash our way through the usual suspects and hopefully explore this first evidence. And there is, I want to say, 1 piece of evidence here, maybe? Yes, here it is. Footprints. How they were able to be contained within a box, I've no idea. Wonderland. There's a trinity we can pop here for some rudimentary healing items, and a whole bunch of NP orbs, as if the game had just been expecting me to abuse that fire spell I got, which really, in its current form, is not that powerful. Like, I mean, yeah, it'll eviscerate a shadow or something, but that's a quarter of our NP gone. Also, don't worry that you'll see as we deal damage to enemies the blue pips will slowly be overtaken by that orange bar, which essentially functions as a second row of MP units. So we may have a max of 2 MP, but we may have 3 or 4 spell casts in stock at a time, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? Let me know if that makes sense. Another significant first, we just rescued 3 of the Dalmatians, meaning there should be a reward coming our way if we can find 2 or 3 more caches of them. We were able to find a Heartless antenna here. That's half the evidence already collected. Now all we need is the pieces that we saw in the Bazaar room. So this stream might run just a little over 3 hours because I want to at least collect all of the evidence, present it at the trial, and probably sign off for the night at that point. At which point, all of this will begin uploading as VOD to our YouTube channel. And there's a boulder blocking our way here. So, we're going to have to get just a little creative and try something that would only work in Wonderland. We're going to have to talk to and negotiate with the local flora. Each of the flowers in this area will ask for a specific item, and you can elect to give it to them if you like. They're just throwaway healing items, and they sometimes give you different or better healing items, but this one is special. we provide it with potions. We should definitely have
This should help.
stock. We will grow back to what I suppose is normal size. So what we have to do here, what we can do rather, is jump on this log Cheshire Cat appeared on, which will raise this lily pad up and create a pathway for us to that little passageway up there. See where that leads in. And to revert to normal size, all we have to do is eat this. It says it's a nut, but I'm not entirely sure what kind. And we will shrink back down to our normal size. Now, there's nothing we can do about that boulder quite yet. That'll be taken care of for us very shortly. But first things first. Oh no. Okay, so you may notice that every time we struck the tree when we were large, we rotated it, along with the branch that served as platform. I, in my infinite wisdom, decided to turn it about face, so that the platform would allow me to reach some treasure I can't even get to right now, instead of allowing us to hopefully access... Wait... No, this doesn't control the platform. I'm sorry, I'm just totally losing the plot. I think this is what we want to do. I think. Yes, okay. So sorry about that, guys. So as you can see, we can actually maneuver across the lily pads to the bazaar room, and we will land on this spigot directly adjacent to one of the treasure boxes containing evidence. Now, Donald, I can't have you getting in my way. Sorry about that. Sacrifices for the good of all, don't you know? We will just jump over here, grab the claw marks, receive a bit of praise from the Cheshire Cat because that was ostensibly the difficult piece of evidence to find. So the Cheshire Cat's dialogue, right, is supposed to be about as eccentric and unintelligible as his source material would suggest. But my problem with that is he doesn't make any less sense than the rest of the principal cast do in later entries, so I guess it's just like bog standard Namura writing. And we received his special gift at the end of that cutscene, by the way, which is the Blizzard Freeze! Which essentially acts as a short-range shotgun, very useful in certain situations, and especially for a situation we'll be finding ourselves in at the conclusion of this chapter. There is one last piece of evidence to be found, after which we can finally go present these and proceed on to the kind of the second half of the Wonderland story arc. And that piece of evidence may be found, I believe, through here. Yes, it will deposit us directly atop the stove, where we can find a box of stank. Excellent. And that completes our set of Heartless evidence, which we need only present to the Queen. Now, since this is Wonderland's trial system, and it is an abject nightmare, we have 4 pieces of evidence, and the Queen will be presenting one obviously fabricated piece of evidence which implicates Alice. She will then shuffle them about and tell us that we are only allowed to check any one piece of evidence. Now, what this means is there's a in this case, rather, there is a 4 out of 5 chance that we will reveal evidence implicating the Heartless, which will favor us in the upcoming, I'll say, special event. But if we, by poor luck, draw the Queen's lot instead, then we will be placed at a disadvantage for that event. Ultimately, this isn't very significant, because the advantage or disadvantage you receive is going to be pretty nominal. So we'll just check this one, the leftmost one doesn't matter. And she'll open a totally... Oh no, we got it! Apparently the box of stank manifested as a full-fledged soldier. No idea why, but... Okay, we've proven Alice's innocence. And to thank us for our assistance in ameliorating kind of the gray nature of this case somewhat, illuminating the truth, the Queen is going to attack us. So, welcome to the deck of cards / Queen of Hearts boss fight. It's exactly as simple and silly as you would expect a Wonderland-themed boss fight to be. Okay, this fight's kind of interesting for its mechanics alone. You will be fighting primarily the card soldiers that serve as guards in the Queen's court. The spade cards wield axes and tend to deal a bit more damage, whereas the heart cards aren't quite so much of a nuisance, save for their considerable range, and attack with spears. Now, our target is actually, hold on, that crank tower. If we destroy all 3 of the crank wheels positioned around the perimeter of the tower, we are then able to attack the tower itself. Shattering it will release the mechanism that is holding Alice's prison cage aloft above the Queen's throne, and allow us to rescue her. The only mechanical gimmick of this fight, aside from the fact that we need to attack a totally static, non-combatant entity to win, is that the cards cannot be eliminated. They can be stunned if we were to eliminate their health, but they would resume the fight or rejoin the fight in a relatively short period of time. Now, we can jump up... Well, I'll just show you. If we get too close to a throne, the Queen will attempt to attack us, but we can attack her. Her hitbox is a little weird. To stun her and cause the red cards to go mad with words temporarily, effectively removing them from the fight altogether.
Come on!
Now, as you'll see, as long as we're not relying on them to deal damage, not only do we do a bang-up job at actually distracting enemies.
Come on!
And in Dooley's case, just straight up laying them out. Wow. So we'll want to keep the Queen stunned, just so we don't have to deal with the constant attacks of the red guards. Yeah, I'm gonna be trading some hits here, sorry.
Come on!
Okay, now we can just break the thing wide open.
Deep freeze! Deep freeze!
The only real difficulty in this fight, well, like I said, damage. The only annoyance is the fact that you're constantly under attack from several different enemies that you just have to ignore. But that's the boss fight over and done with. I think we got a new ability or a couple upgrades from that. Always nice. And we find that somehow Alice has been abducted from her cage in the very brief time it took us to fight off the Queen's guards. So now it's a race against time as we try to find Alice and rescue her from the Heartless before the Queen's guards can track her down, or the Heartless can abscond with her. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is where we're actually going to leave it today. I want to thank all of you who have joined us here on stream, or have checked us out on VOD, And again, I want to humbly ask that each of you let me know what you thought of the streams, of the content thus far, and what I could do to improve myself or my setup for future broadcasts. Now, precluding any unusual, unfortunate circumstances arising, I should be back to broadcast during the same time tomorrow on New Year's Eve. That would be 4 to 7 p.m. Central Time. Thank you so much for your time, and we will see you again tomorrow. Take care.